And my name is Stacey Quade, and I am a clinical herbalist, healing touch practitioner, and instructor, and I'm a retired occupational therapist. I spent over 30 years in the conventional healthcare system in occupational therapy on the rehab unit at Miller Dwan, working with people that have brain injuries. That was my core team, along with other physical disabilities like strokes and spinal cord injuries. And so I worked with a gamut of people in that world, and about halfway through my time there, I incorporated healing touch as one of my primary modalities, and really that added a layer to what I could do for people in the hospital. And we've done some research there, but also just have made that's like one of the bones of my private practice. So if someone was coming to see me, they'd get a pretty well-rounded consult with healing touch, if that's what you wanted, herbalism consult, and then all of the pieces that come along from knowing about the body from an occupational therapy standpoint. So today we're going to talk about categories of herbs. And we're breaking it down into two kind of more broad categories that are sort of the overarching umbrella. And then we'll kind of break down them into the little subcategories, and along the way we'll do some organoleptic experiences.
What did you say at the beginning? We're going to talk about what?
Categories of herbs.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So that's what your handout is. So it will give you an idea and start helping you to learn like the words that we use when we're looking for certain types of herbs to address different tissue states or states of being mentally, emotionally, that sort of thing, and what they're good at and why they're good at that. So what we want to think about when we're talking about these different categories is if we're thinking about an herb being moistening, you know, like Jim McDonald is an herbalist from Michigan, and he says, don't just think of an herb as being moistening, think of how is it moistening. So take it one more thought process downstream to see if you can get more of a pinpoint of how is it doing its moistening job, what's it doing to the tissue, because things get moistened in different ways or dried out in different ways. Some things get dried out because there's movement involved, like wind, air or heat, or some things get dried out because they get astringed. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to start to learn as we look at the different categories of alternative herbs. So alternatives are herbs that actually do something specific. They are used to alter favorably the course of an ailment. So they, they're working to change the state of a particular tissue or an organ function, and they are targeting something like liver herbs or digestive herbs. I mean, they're specifically what we're looking at, changing something that's going on there. Antiparasitics, antivirals, that kind of thing. Whereas adaptogens are more of like a tonic herb. Adaptogenic herbs are really they're broad spectrum. They are basically, this is an actual definition that they have for it. They're harmless plants with no side effects. They increase the general capacity of the human body to adapt to stress and increase resistance to disease. So they help us with our resilience. And lots of people need adaptogens nowadays. They're not localized to a particular organ, like a liver herb would be, but they are systemic. And they just help you to bring things back into balance. So they're restorative, they're usually nourishing, They help us to just get back online with things that are out of balance in systems. So we use adaptogens a lot of the times when people are having generalized anxiety from stress, or they're completely exhausted because they're burned out, or that they're so depleted from maybe an illness or from not eating properly or things like that. And Matthew Wood, who is one of our herbal teachers, he talks about herbs are nudgeopathy. They're not so much like symptom removal. You take this, it changes, you're done, for the most part. These herbs are things that you take over a longer period of time, daily use, can add as a food as medicine. So we're going to just talk about the adaptogens first. They work kind of on a bell curve of being more calming or more stimulating. So looking again to the situation of what is this particular person working with? Are they the burn the candle at both ends, just frazzled to the ends of their last nerve, not sleeping because of that, busy brain, getting, frying their adrenals, that kind of thing? We're going to want an adaptogen that has some more calming effects. That would be ashwagandha. People talk about ashwagandha a lot nowadays on social media and in mainstream health, and you can pretty much pick it up just about anywhere. It's real gentle and it is more calming. It can actually help people to get more calm at night for sleeping. It's not a sedative, but the way that it works with the body systems and the adrenals and things, it has more of that effect. So that's kind of the most calming one that we have in this group of adaptogens. And then in the middle, sort of in the more neutral range, we have astragalus. Maybe we've heard of astragalus in the past. People use it as a pot herb. It's really a good one to, if you're a soup maker or a stew maker, that kind of thing. Sauces, you can throw a piece of astragalus root in there like you do a bay leaf, and it just puts that right into the food that you're eating. You can take it as a supplement as well. And that one's just more neutral, and it's very kind of earthy, and it's real like solid feeling. So that's a nice one for a lot of people. Tulsi is in the middle there. That's holy basil. Have you maybe seen Tulsi tea on the shelf in the store here, perhaps? And it's a Eastern Indian herb, and it's actually a sacred herb over there. And most of the houses that honor this plant will have one actually, growing in their house, and they treat it very special. Tulsi is a really light, bright taste to it. Fresh Tulsi is amazing, and you can plant it as a garden herb. It's an annual in our neck of the woods, but it grows really well, and it's just got this beautiful, fresh, light. It's not really florally, it's kind of citrusy, yummy flavor. When it's dried, some of that brightness goes away a little bit, but it's still just really aromatic and lovely. And that's a really nice one. It's more neutral in energetics, but it's really uplifting. So if someone is having some trouble with their mood, slightly depressed, maybe not clinically, needing something stronger, Tulsi is a really nice adaptogen to put on board. And it mixes well. All of these things mix well with other things to give them more flavor, if you like. So you can build some nice tea blends out of using them as a base. Moving into a little bit more stimulating, but still in that more neutral range, is one of our really abundant local herbs that grows wild a lot of places, is stinging nettle. Has anybody here ever had stinging nettle tea? Or eaten it in any form? A lot of people will make pesto and soup and fresh things out of it in the spring when it's growing very small before it gets real stingy. And it's got a real dark green minerally taste. And that's one of the reasons that it's so helpful to us as an adaptogen, because it is packed with minerals and chlorophyll, and it's got one of the highest contents of bioavailable plant protein out there in the green world. So stinging nettles actually also fits into an alternative category in a way, because it's really a specific for seasonal allergies. And when you capture the sting in your remedy, that sting part is what helps us with raising our trigger threshold for allergies. So it works on the protein pathway of that histamine response to break down the proteins of the antigen or the thing that's causing the reaction, and then you're not so reactive. So it's a really good one for like spring and fall for people. But in addition to that, if you don't capture the sting, it's still a great adaptogen as an overall tonic herb. Then we move on to Schisandra and rhodiola. They are more stimulating. They're more astringing. They're slightly more activating. So these are the ones that I like to share with people that are having trouble getting off the couch. They've lost their motivation, they can't get going, nothing really matters so much anymore, or they're really struggling with, maybe there's a hard situation that they're having to get up and deal with, and it's just exhausting them, and they need something to help with that. This one's great for like parents with young kids that are just like, I can't do this anymore, I just want to sleep. Not to displace that sleep, but to help them to get to a place where then they can maybe find a way to move their life around so that they can get more sleep. So if someone is doing that, I don't give people adaptogens or sleep things if we're trying to just put a tape over the check engine light. We want to make sure that we're addressing that root cause and helping change that lifestyle if it's at all possible. But these are good for bridging that and helping to keep this functioning better so that they feel more resilient, so they can try and change things. Rhodiola is really nice for women when we're going through different cyclical changes. It can be really nice for perimenopause, for some different things. And then we have Eleuthero. Eleuthero is really gentle, and it's very warming, and it's for older population. My teacher Margie says you're not old enough for Eleuthero yet. You get something different because, this is for when you're a little bit more in your years. It helps with mental clarity.
Pardon me, but could you explain what you mean when you say warming?
It's got properties that make your body more actively warmed up.
Oh, so it really means really warm.
It means warming. So the difference between, think of cinnamon.
Mm-hmm.
cinnamon is a warming spice, right? Think of dill. Is that warming?
How about nutmeg? Is nutmeg one?
What do you think?
I would guess yes.
Yeah, it is. It's more warming than cooling.
Cayenne.
Hot.
Hot.
You know, so there's degrees of warm, right? Just like what's that scale that they measured hotness of peppers on?
Yeah, that's one of them, yeah.
You know, so there's degrees of warming for herbs too. Like ginger is warming in the 4th degree, they call it, because that one's pretty hot. It's also diffusive. So you have ginger tea, you know, it gets things moving, but it pushes the circulation to the periphery and gets things moving, so it warms up peripherally. Cinnamon is actually warming in the opposite. It actually helps to bring the heat to the center. So depending again on what's going on with this combination of things, that what is it that we need to, you know, balance out, and by learning how these properties and these plants are matching our tissue types and our constitution, is that's where the learning comes in, and the practicing. You know, I would give, you know, some people will show up, you know, people can show up with like a sinus condition, for instance. They can come in and be like, oh, I have a headache, I'm stuffy, I can't breathe, blah, blah, blah. And it could be for 2 completely different reasons. One person could have soggy, boggy, damp, spongy, just saturated tissues in their sinuses that aren't draining. It presents like stuffed up, can't breathe, headache, whatever. But that's a cold, damp condition. So we want to do things that are going to dry and astringe that tissue and get things moving. The next person comes in, same complaint, but they're dry. They're so dry and hot that their membranes are inflamed, and the inflammation is causing that same feeling. Now, if you give them an astringent herb, they're not going to come back because that's not going to help them at all. You know, it's going to make them feel worse and more dried out. So we want to give them something that's moistening and cooling and get some fluid moving back in there. So then we look to the herbs that are going to do that. So learning about your constitution and what works for you, that's you know, Herbalism 101 for our own self-care. Right? So is this making sense? Does anybody here take an adaptogen any regularly?
I have in the past.
What ones?
Ashwagandha.
Yeah,
I take that every day.
ashwagandha.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever stopped taking it and like noticed what happens when you stop?
I have post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health problems, and I've been on supplements for maybe 23 years, and they've changed. So a doctor helped me get on supplements that helped me, because I was pretty critical with my depression. I still have depression, but anyhow, so supplements have really helped me. I've been off. I was on so much medication back in the day that I didn't even know
Yeah.
who I was. You know?
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
it's pretty severe. I've
So
been in
you-
the hospital.
Mhm. Yeah. So you can notice a big difference when you
Yes.
stop taking the
Yeah,
adaptogen.
different. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I was wondering if St. John's wort was an adaptogen.
St. John's wort is not an adaptogen. St. John's wort is a nervine, and it's also a blood cleanser. And so we're going to actually start going down this list, and we'll probably find St. John's wort in here. So, so it's alphabetical, and I think I got all the categories. There's quite a few of them. We'll see. It'll give you a good start. So aromatics. So aromatics, kind of, names right there for you. They have high volatile oils. So these are the ones these are the smelly herbs, the things that are, in the mint family, the citrus family, the rose family. There's a lot of fragrance involved, and the properties of the essential oils that are in there, those are usually the properties of the medicine of the plant. So if you are needing something that is going to be more stimulating, you can look to things like the mint family, because most mint plants kind of get things moving. On the other hand, if you're thinking about wanting something more calming, we can look to like the rose family or lavender. Those are also high in aromatics, but they have, you just know the difference when you smell them. You can pretty much feel what's happening with that aroma. Aromatic plants, because of the high volatile oil content, are often antimicrobial. So they're really good for colds and flus, healing tissues, wound care, those kinds of things that maybe bacteria or virus might be involved in. So you use aromatics standalone or as part of a formula. One, to make the formula taste better, so you can get your people to take it, or you will drink it yourself. So there's a lot of layering that can happen. And they're on a bell curve too. Pretty much all of these herbs we're going to talk about are. Some are more soothing and cooling, like the rose plants. And then as you even think about the difference between spearmint and peppermint, which one's hotter?
What were they?
Spearmint and peppermint? Do you think spearmint tastes more? See, now, look at these two constitutions. Are they different? Yeah. So perhaps that is a personal thing. I had a client one time who was being recommended that she drink peppermint tea for her upset stomach, but it was too strong for her, and her family was trying to get her to drink it. Oh, this is gonna work, and she's like, whoa. She didn't like it. It was just not matching her at all. And then she tried spearmint, and it was like perfect for her because it matched where she was at, and it helped her stomach. So it's, again, you get to know your friends. A lot of the aromatics are also antiseptic because of those volatile oils. They have antimicrobial properties. Most of the time they're more astringent when they have more antiseptic in them. Some of them will have like a numbing action. A lot of the cooking spices that we use are antiseptic. Have you ever taken a whole clove and stuck it in your mouth? It makes your mouth numb. It's an old toothache remedy, so that's the antiseptic property. And there's some other ones here that are common in the kitchen that you can find for things like that. So if you're having gum issues, you can make a rinse, make a tea and rinse your mouth with them to help, heal your gums. You can use these to help, heal a scrape or a cut. Typically will sting, even in a tea form, but just for the short while, and then that antiseptic piece kicks in, and it's numbing. So it's a good way to use it. Echinacea is really antiseptic. Purple cone flower. Anybody have that in their garden? And in commerce, you often see that it's the root that's used for the remedies, but you can use the flowering tops and the leaves. You don't have to dig the plant up and mess around with the roots to make a good remedy. So purpurea is what we have in our area mostly. Angustifolia is the species that is often used in commerce, but they both work. So a lot of people will make a whole plant tincture. So, you know, it's a perennial. There's going to be a time where you need to dig it up and separate it and move it. And at that point, it's nice to take the roots and incorporate that into the whole plant, because there's just a little bit different properties in the root itself. So, golden seal is another very antiseptic herb. Golden seal is endangered. So if you're going to work with golden seal, you want to make sure you're getting it from a herb company or a place that's farming it, because then they're doing it sustainably. And it's it does grow in around in our woods. It's hard to find. It's a little tiny plant, and it grows in the shady areas where it's kind of damp. So very very drying, very astringent, and kind of a strong herb. It's not one that I usually go to first, and it's definitely not one that people usually will take standalone, and you can't make tea out of it. I mean, you can, but it's super bitter, and it's really hard for anybody to get that down. It's got a lot of what's called berberines in it, which kind of that's why it's called golden seal, because it's a very yellowy oil and the root is bright yellow, it just leaks yellow oil, and that is the very, very bitter component. And so yarrow is another antiseptic. Yarrow again is kind of fits a lot of categories. Yarrow is antiseptic, it's analgesic, it's anti-inflammatory, it's a blood purifier. It balances the blood. If you're bleeding too much, it can help stop the bleeding. If you need to bleed more, it can help nudge the bleeding. It's pretty amazing. Yarrow has that bitter flavor to it as well. It doesn't have berberines in it, but it is a bitter plant. And then spilanthes. We have spilanthes here to taste today, but we're going to save that till later. So astringents, they're tissue tonifiers. Okay, so we've got tissue that's soggy, boggy, and needs to be toned up so that it can push fluid where it's supposed to go, or tighten up so there's not laxity, like prolapse potentially to happen. We're going to use astringent herbs. Again, some of these can also have a numbing effect, but some astringents that you might have heard about, witch hazel. People use witch hazel as a skin toner, you know, and that tightening up that pores, that's astringent. So we have skin all over the inside of our body too. And so a lot of times those pores need to be tightened up a little bit to make the digestion work better, to keep the blood flowing where it's supposed to go and not pooling. So we're going to want to put plants on board for that. A lot of times, you know, for women, you know, this is an area where we could use some help with astringing and supporting and tonifying. Two herbs for that are used all the time is red raspberry leaf and lady's mantle. Anybody here ever have raspberry leaf tea? Yeah. Do you like it?
I haven't had it for a long time. I don't remember.
Raspberry leaf is a great tonifier, and it's also really nutritious. So you can get a kind of a double bang for your buck. It's great for everybody, but it's a really good foundational herb for women through their whole lifespan, really. It helps with puberty, it helps with regular adult years, with just proper functioning. It helps when women are pregnant, towards the end of the pregnancy. It's great for lactation and supporting that. It's got a lot of minerals in it. That's what gives it that kind of real dark green, kind of metal taste, you know, minerally. Jim McDonald calls that a hard flavor, and I think that describes it well, that minerally taste. Blackberry leaf is very astringent. One of the times that astringents are really important is if someone, for instance, has like a really bad flu, like a stomach bug, where they're having trouble from that end, and they're not being able to keep their water in their body, especially with kids, and this can be kind of dangerous. Blackberry leaf is uber astringent. Better for adults because it is strong and it doesn't take much to shift things over. Raspberry leaf is the next less astringent one. And then for kids, we can use strawberry leaves, and they're very gentle. So like even like little tiny infants can have a strawberry leaf, little leaf tea, and that can be helpful if they get that really terrible flu.
If you have those in your garden and you want to dry some, is there a best time to dry those leaves?
Well, you always want to pick them when they're the freshest, and you can use them right away fresh. There's a caveat for drying raspberry leaves or using them. You can use them very, very fresh or very, very dry. But when they're drying in the middle, you want to leave them alone because there's some changing going on there chemically, and they can be a little bit irritating to your body. So, and if you're picking the raspberry leaves, so the cane that the berries are growing on this year will only have leaves on it next year. So, and typically you don't have to worry too much about harvesting the canes because there's plenty to go around. But if you're trying to manage it so that you're going to get the berries next year, that's what you want to think about. So you're taking the ones, that aren't going to be your next year's harvest. So, and they're really easy to dry too. You just cut the cane and hang them up until they're really, really dry, and then with gloves on, they strip right off the stem, super easy. So it's a easy one to get lots of and use as a base in your teas, year round. Makes a good cold tea base with like berries in it. Digestive bitters. Bitter greens and roots should be part of your daily diet. Most people in the U.S. need more bitters in their life, and we're not very used to it. Bitters stimulate the digestive process. They help our enzymes get activated the way that they're supposed to. They help the gallbladder and the liver. We have lots of great bitters that grow like crazy around us, and you can dig them with wild abandon. And we have yellow dock, curly dock. There's all kinds of docks that grow around our area. And they're pretty easy to identify, and they all have some component of that bitter to them. And in the spring, when the leaves are young, you can eat the leaves as well as part of your salads and things, and they're real a little bit tougher, but more like a kale or a celery or something. Not celery, spinach. Yeah, really good to add in. We have burdock root. Does everybody know what the burdock plant is? Burdock is a plant that people often think, is that rhubarb? And then you look and it's not quite rhubarb, and it's got more of an oval shaped leaf, and it's generally fuzzy, kind of prickly, and then it gets a big stalk up the middle and little round burrs on top that are like little brown sticky balls that if you're out with your dog in the field or something in the fall, then you're going to get full of those. That's burdock. We use the root. And burdock helps us with our digestion, more specifically helping us to assimilate the oils, break down the oils, and get the oils out to where they need to go in the body. So if someone's having hormonal issues, skin issues, or nervous system issues, we always kind of look foundationally at what's going on with the liver. And if the liver isn't fired up and being able to do its job well, and it's like congested and not metabolizing well, oftentimes these are areas of where we'll see an imbalance, because the oils that we need for those systems aren't getting to where they need to go. And burdock can be very helpful with that. Most of the yellow sap plants, so with the berberines in them, are bitters. So you'll see a lot of those plants in that category in digestive bitter blends or as a standalone bitter herb to take, like celandine. That's a very, very yellow bitter plant, and that is used to help people with their liver and their gallbladder. So, and gallbladder kind of matches, it's that yellowy color. So for the bile. Orange peels. Dry your orange peels and put them in your tea. There's just a teeny little bit of bitter taste, and it's a really nice little punch to a lot of things. So, orange peel and rose. A lot of people like that one. Orange peel and mint go good together. There's a lot of good combinations. So, carminatives is another herb category. Carminatives are stomach soothers. And this one really has a lot to do with somebody's constitution. Because there are people, you can ask people, do you like ginger? And they're like, usually they're two camps. Love it, no thank you. And so if someone's got an upset stomach and someone tells them, drink ginger tea, and they're like, no thank you. Typically, because ginger's hot in the 4th degree, and then that's not really going to do the trick for someone that's already heated up in there. We want to look to the cooling herbs that are carminative. And some of them that are really quick to act and tasty is fennel seed. If you don't like that sort of licoricey taste, that can be off-putting. But fennel is very cooling, mucilaginous to a certain degree, very calming to the stomach. It helps with, if you get gassy, it helps to take down the gas bubbles. Other ones that are more cooling than heating for a tummy are dill, cilantro, what else? Bay leaf. Bay leaf is a bit more warming, but it's very mild, and it's really got this really sweet, gentle taste, and that really works well for a lot of people. So if you know someone that's getting kind of bloaty and distended after they eat, or just has a mildly upset stomach, a cup of bay leaf tea is a really nice thing to try. And most people have them in their cupboard. So it's a good one. When we have company, like overnight company, I always take the fennel and stick it in the bathroom in case people get upset at night from eating and sleeping in strange places and that sort of thing. Tell them how to use it. You just chew on a few seeds for a little while, and you can spit the seed shell out after a bit, because it, otherwise it's like eating like a sunflower seed. You really have to crunch it down, but it works literally in just a few minutes. It's a good one to have on hand. Again, back to the mint plants, you know, spearmint, catnip, lemon balm. Lemon balm fits into 2 categories. It's carminative. It actually fits into 3. It's a nervine, so it's calming. It's also an antiviral. So you have a Melissa plant in your garden, you've got 3 bases covered right there. And it's gentle. Kids can have it, elders, you know, most people like the flavor of it. The one caveat would be that it's good for hyperthyroid, but if someone is really compromised hypothyroid, like 1 cup's not gonna, you know, rock their boat. It's not something they would want to be drinking regularly. So there's other things that they can try. Do I have I don't. Demulcents. Demulcents. So emollients are for our skin on the outside. Demulcents are for our skin on the inside. They're the same herbs, basically. It's just where you put them changes the name. So we have moistening mucilaginous herbs. Jim McDonald says they have a slimification factor. So chia seeds, flax seeds, if you've ever ground them and put them in water, they get goopy. Marshmallow root grows around. We've got marshmallow and different kinds of mallow plants everywhere around on the edges of the woods here. And you can use the leaves, which are a little less mucilaginous, but very mild and gentle and make good additions to leafy teas. And then we have the root for when we want to go a little deeper with some slamification. I use marshmallow root a lot in different gut herb teas. Slippery elm is another one that you may have heard about, which is even more mucilaginous than marshmallow root, but it is more endangered. So we're gonna just experience. I had this infusing on the counter all pretty much the afternoon. And we'll just see what you think about it and see if you can. This is marshmallow root. So if what you want to do is just take a smell at first and just see what it smells like. We need how many more? 1, 2, 1. And
Do you need more cups?
Hmm?
Do you need more cups?
I don't think so. I can drink some at home. All right. So see what it smells like. It's pretty mild. It's kind of sweet, but it's got a little something to it, right? And then just take a sip. Kind of hold it in your mouth. See, what does it feel like? It's not super slippery, but it's kind of there. Drink a little more. And then as you're swallowing it down, just kind of see if you can, what's it doing in there? What's it feel like? Is it more warming than cooling? What's it feel like to your body? Do you like the flavor?
It's a little scratchy on my throat.
Feels scratchy? Interesting. Well, it does have a little bit of a tonifying property. Yeah. This one's kind of, it's lubricating, but it can also help tighten things up a little.
Yeah, it feels thicker. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I feel like my throat's a little scratchy.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. So slippery elm does not have that component. It's just straight up gloppy. So it also has more of a sweeter, earthier taste. A lot of people, it's tasty, but it's also, again, you gotta be careful where you're getting it because it is really getting endangered over the world. So, is anybody here like going hard pass, no thank you?
I thought it was real mild. I could hardly.
It is mild. So it's a good one to add though to other tea blends if you're needing a little bit more of that lubrication. I use marshmallow root a lot with like mullein and hyssop. Mullein is a herb that's used widely for really dried out, hot, burning lungs and like bronchitis and things like that. So mullein helps the lymphatic system and magically somehow signals the lungs to get some more moisture in there. And then marshmallow root does the same thing. And the hyssop is very diffusive, and so that helps the process. And together it's just a really nice blend for like this dry COVID cough, for instance, that's going on. So we wouldn't want to use those herbs when someone is in the front stages of a cold or a virus that has that thick, goopy, hacking up chunks of things or globs of things. That would not be helpful. What kind of herbs will we need for that?
Like in the garlic family, the antiseptic.
Antiseptic. What else will we want if we have too much thick junk in our body?
What about this cayenne?
Something warming and stimulating. Good. Something that's going to thin those secretions or dry them up.
Like the tiny tea that you had me do.
Hey, go ahead. This would be a good time for you to share. Would you mind?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
So I was sick for probably 2 weeks by the time I saw you, and didn't know Stacey existed until I did a Facebook post and they tagged her in it. But I thought I needed mullein, and sent her a message because I couldn't find mullein here at the co-op or anywhere. And she's like, yeah, I don't think you need mullein. So we did. What did I mix? A thyme with calendula, I think is what I ended up doing, for 2 days, and felt better like immediately, like the next day. But then I started feeling more tight, and messaged her again. I'm like, okay, now do I keep at it or do I need to switch? And she said that now it's time for mullein. And then you gave me a blend. I can't remember what all was in it, but
Probably what I just talked about.
yeah.
Oh.
And then we did the
Cramp bark and
the
usnea.
usnea
Yeah.
tincture.
Uh-huh.
I did that for probably a week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I was feeling, that I think the day before I was going to go to the urgent care is when I saw Stacey, and I would have ended up on antibiotics. 4 days after being on the different herbs, I was feeling not 100%, but much better. So knocked it out.
Mm-hmm. So what I had her do was cough for me, and it wasn't that dry, burning, hot cough. There was stuff in there, but it was thick and stuck. So she needed to get it moving. So the thyme, mint family plant, stimulating volatile oils, thin secretions, antimicrobial extraordinaire. The second you think you're getting sick or someone's clouding the air around you, go home and make thyme tea and drink it. So, and then so we use antivirals to help with slowing that cloning process that they do once they get in the body so that they can't grow more and make matters worse. When we get past the first section of an illness and we're past the virus stage where things are dying off now, then we have bacteria that comes in. And so we have to then add in the antibacterials to help the body to clean up the garbage. So antibacterials and also lymphatics. So calendula is both. So that is why you may have heard about calendula being used in the past couple of years more with things like elderberry for COVID, because the elderberry is the antiviral. You get past that, and the part that where people were getting into trouble with their lungs was at that bacterial stage, where there was just too much stuff and their body couldn't clear it. So we add the lymphatics, which get the lymph system helping to clean house, and the antibacterials to come in and help also with managing those critters. So we follow the tissue state, and that's what you need to think about. You know, I'm really, really goopy. Okay, I'm less goopy. I don't need something so strong anymore. I can either make my tea weaker or start switching the herbs. Okay, now I'm not goopy anymore, but I'm getting more dry, so I need to put something more moistening back on. And you were also spazzy from it, so we added an antispasmodic to help calm that down. And then that was what gave you that relief. So this is usnea. This is called old man's beard. For nickname, Usnea barbata, and it grows in the woods and it hangs on like dead balsam trees. You might see it when you're hiking. I brought usnea because, you know, we're out in the woods hiking and skiing around and things like that now this time of year. You can still find usnea right now, so you could be going out and foraging still. Usnea is very antimicrobial. It's right. Sure. It's almost like an antibiotic. It's staph, strep, and pneumonia specific. So anything coccus, pneumococcus, staphylococcus, is very specific to that. It's an upper respiratory herb. It's, as you can feel it, it's kind of dry. It's diffusive, so it's for a lot of those conditions of fluid imbalance in the upper respiratory system. It really doesn't grow on hardwood trees. It grows on the balsams and dead spruces and things like that, and the cedar. Okay, so here's what you're going to do. This is a usnea tincture. This is actually a double extraction. Usnea is one of the herbs that we make as a double extraction, which involves a two-step process of tincturing it in strong alcohol, and then making an infusion after that tincture's done with the same herb in water, and you make a strong decoction, so you cook it down. So you're matching the fluid amounts of what you get from the tincture and what you get from the decoction. You put it together. So it pulls out like a whole bunch of different layers of the constituents from the plant, instead of just like one profile of what the alcohol would take out or the tea. You can just make it as a tea, and it works well, but we're going to do some tasting here so you can just get the flavor of it. So you can do this two ways. In a lot of classes, we just like do this. You put it on your hand, and then you can taste it. If you don't want to do that, you can use your little taster spoon and just take a taste. So you can pass that around. And again, see what it feels like in your mouth. Texture, sensation, flavor. It's an alcohol tincture, so if anybody is opposed to that, then that part of the tasting game will be out for you. But I tried to bring a couple different versions of things, so you get to try something. Sure.
Or wait for everyone?
1, 2, 3. Chug, chug. Save your spoons.
Just one drop.
1 or 2, whatever.
So, I had forgotten that it was, I bought that was at Herb Farm, but this one I had forgotten that they were alcohol based and I
Oh.
went and took a whole drop full.
Yeah. I tell people when they are, getting this and they're like at the height of whatever, it's like take a quarter drop of like every couple of hours for the first couple of days and then titrate it down because you want to get that in there and get going. While you're doing that, this is reindeer lichen. I should have passed them around together, but pass that one back around as this one's coming because they grow together oftentimes and they're very different looking. This one, caribou lichen or reindeer lichen because it looks like little antlers. So when they're standing by each other or hanging by each other, you can clearly see the difference.
Yeah.
Marcia, did you get this one?
No, thank you.
But sometimes, you get out there and like, is that what I'm looking for? Or
What's the name of this one again?
reindeer lichen or caribou lichen?
it
And it's
grows-
not, they grow, sometimes they're right mixed in together and you have to peel that out of the,
They like each other.
they do.
So what is the one that grows from the, birch tree?
That's called chaga? Is that what you're thinking of? That's a big black lumpy thing.
No, it's green that they call it old, so this is old man's beard?
That is old man's beard.
So that's herbalism, I got mixed up.
Mhm.
Is there a lichen that's special for birch trees?
Well, not that I know of.
I love birch.
You might have chaga.
I have to. I use it and it's wonderful.
The other thing that you can do with birch, and I tried to find a piece of, because we heat with wood, so I was digging through our birch bark pieces to try and find one that was more fresh and not dried out. But birch has salicylic acid in it. All the willows and the cousins do in that family. And that's like aspirin. So now is a good time after those big storms we had and the winds, if you're out in the woods, to look for a freshly downed birch tree. Don't go peeling birch bark off of standing ones, but it's the inner bark is where the medicine is. So if you peel the layers of the birch apart, and inside of it will be just this really light pink, beautiful light pink color, that means that it's fresh and it's got good medicine still in it. And then it'll have like this little white powdery layer to it. You can sometimes even just wipe it off if it's really got a lot of it, and that's the salicin. So you can make tea out of that and drink it if you have like a sore throat or muscle aches or things like that. It is a blood thinner, just like aspirin is. You gotta be careful with that if you need to. You can also make a big pot of it and like put it in your bathtub or soak your feet in it or use it as a compress on a sore part of your body. So it's another useful thing. Other parts, you don't have to peel the bark. You can, like, if you find a branch that's down, you can take all the little twig ends and just cut them up and use it the same way. So that's another way that a lot of people will do their tree medicines with the branches and twigs and things instead of stripping bark. It's a lot easier. So.
You make a birch syrup like maple syrup.
They do, yeah.
Does that have any medicinal properties?
I think it's good for your soul.
Yeah, it's sweet. That's
Yeah.
medicinal.
It takes 10 times as much birch sap to make the same amount of maple syrup. So you kind of have to decide what's important. So, yeah. What do we think of usnea? Could you get the flavor of it? I like the flavor of it. It's kind of, I don't know, pungent.
I did put mine in orange juice just because of the strong alcohol flavor.
Yeah. You can always do that. Let's see. Let's go back to the list here. Diaphoretics. So diaphoretics help to relax tension in tissues and stimulate circulation to open stuckness. So they're used to help with opening up the lungs if there's stuckness there, or the skin when someone has a fever that is not moving in the right direction enough and it's getting stuck in their body and it's getting to a point where it's not being helpful. They are used for different kinds of ritual in like sauna and things for detoxing. If you wanted to really get your diaphoretic system, your lymphatic system, and your skin and your pores moving, you can take a cup of a diaphoretic tea and then go sit in a hot tub. But to be careful, you know, or sit in a sauna because you can really activate a system. But if you're trying to get something to move for like a detox situation, it's a good thing to do. Otherwise, just, you know, not adding that heat component, but doing the diaphoretic herbs when someone has a stuck fever or stuck lungs, they usually will help within not too long of a time. Elderflower is more diffusive and diaphoretic than the elderberry. Lots of people make their combination of both of them for their remedies. I almost always, if I'm making a tincture remedy, put both in. So you're getting all those components. Elderflower is very gentle for children. So it is like the children's flu tea. And it's mild tasting, they'll drink it. And it's calming. So it's got some calming properties as well. So it's really good for kids. Other diaphoretics that we use for helping with those deep flu symptoms, one of the main go-tos is boneset. Boneset is Eupatorium perfoliatum, and it grows around in like the wet part of the field, or on the upside of like where it starts to dry out from the pond. And it's really, it's got a bunch of different layers of function, and one of them is for helping broken bones heal faster. And the signature for that, for the plant, is really cool. If you look like down from the top at the leaves, the stem goes up right through the middle of the leaf. It's like one leaf, it almost looks like a diamond, and in the middle of the diamond, the stem goes right through it. And so that's the signature for that mending of the bone. And also the flowers are bone white.
What was the name of that one again?
Boneset, and I'm going to pass this around so you can taste it. It's Eupatorium perfoliatum. And I'm not going to tell you what this tastes like until you all taste it. And we're going to talk a little bit about the specialness of its taste.
So my brother-in-law is very much into herbs and natural foods, and so I cut myself really bad, and before this it said make sure you have cayenne, and literally I thought, do I have to go get stitches in this? I cut myself on the glass and I put cayenne right on it and then wrapped it and didn't move it for 2 days, kept it dry, and you can even tell where I cut myself.
Mm-hmm. Cayenne is used because of its heating properties as a counter irritant a lot, and it's used, believe it or not, on burns. And I don't have any actual personal experience with it, but I have stories of other herbalists, and I guess it's pretty interesting and hard and can be kind of a little bit painful when it gets first put on there, but it almost immediately like stops the pain because it's got all of the properties that it has for like pain killing and stuff, and then it helps to heal the wound. So, what'd you think?
That was kind of strong.
Strong in what way?
Um,
Was it sweet?
I didn't think it was sweet, more bitter.
Bitter. Bitter. Very bitter.
I loved it.
I like bitter too. So a lot of people just are like, ugh, bitter. And if you're sick or if you have a broken bone, you actually like that taste even if you hate it otherwise. And so they say, do you drink the bone set tea until you don't like it anymore, and then you don't need it. So this is amazing for helping push a fever to get it to break and do its job. And it's for flus that make you ache to your bones. So bone break fever. So when you've got that flu that feels like you got run over by a train, this is the one you do. So,
Can I ask one thing about cayenne, and also when people use it for if somebody's having a heart attack, do you put it under the tongue?
Yeah, you know, there's all kinds of things that you can do to help bridge the gap to get people to the hospital.
Sure.
You might be interested in Dr. Christopher's work. He was all about cayenne. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Where are we? Diuretics stimulate the production and elimination. So they decrease edema in 3 ways. They help to stimulate the kidney blood flow, which is kind of irritating and then makes the kidney want to push the fluid through. And I didn't write the other 2 down. They help. Yes?
Is there benefit to using like the bone set topically? When
Yes.
the bone is broken
Yes,
too?
I tell people take it and put it on. And I'll often give it to them with like my Fantastic Four, which has other herbs for like the soft tissue and the nerve pain and things like that. And I'll say put the bone set into that and rub it on, and if they can get to the broken bone, and if they can't, then taking it. An herbalist friend some years ago, I don't know, it was maybe about 10, 15 years ago, there was a really bad flu outbreak in town. It was bad, like they had the nursing homes and things shut down, which like with COVID, everybody was in quarantine and that. And she had fallen and broken her foot or something, and she had to go to subacute rehab because her house was not accessible or something like that. But she was in the nursing home and then this flu outbreak happened. But she was taking her bone set for her foot the whole time, and she was like one of 3 people in this whole facility that didn't get the flu. And she thinks it's because she was taking the bone set. So, anyway.
And how do you obtain that? Is it a tea or is it a pill or?
Well, it grows around, so you can look for it and forage it.
Right.
I don't know if they have it in the bulk herb bin here, but they have it in tincture form, like Herb Farm tincture,
Oh, sure.
and also probably in like tablets, supplement form. You know, I make the tincture. I do have the tea. Sometimes people get that, even though they might not think they want it. So, yeah. Diuretics. Oh yeah, here it is. So they, it's osmotic, so it reduces the water retention and reabsorption in the parts of the kidney that do that. And then they also increase the cardiac output. of the fluid, so it's helping to move the fluid that way. So paired often some of the deeper lymphatic herbs like calendula or cleavers or things like that and hawthorn. It's a really specific heart herb. So for like congestive heart failure and edema in the lower extremities, it can be very helpful. Emmenagogues, they stimulate and regulate menstrual flow. So those are used with some pretty in-depth conversation about what is going on with this cycle. You don't want to just start throwing out emmenagogues here and there if you don't know all the details about what's going on. So it's just another category to learn about. Emollients, again, are demulcent herbs that are used topically instead of internally. So we could take this marshmallow root if we had like a sunburn or a bad scrape or something and just put it on, you know, irritated skin, eczema, rosacea, those kinds of things. The thing about the demulcents topically is sometimes they're sticky and people might not like that so much. So you gotta play your crowd. So, expectorants. Those are the ones that help the body move the fluids, like the elderberry, like horehound, like elecampane and angelica. They're going to get in there, they're going to thin secretions, they're going to make you cough so that it will cough up. You know, they'll get things moving. And there's many of them. Again, back to the mid-family plants, like you were talking about with the thyme. And those can be very helpful. We've talked a lot about lymphatics. Some of the other ones that maybe we didn't touch on yet, violet, any kind of violet. Johnny jump ups, the little wild white ones, the Canada violets, cultivated ones, if they're, you know, you want to check your source. What are you having along with your medicine? But they're very gentle, and they're real mucilaginous, and violets have an affinity to the throat and ears. They're also a lymphatic, so they're used a lot in certain kinds of lymphatic remedies and very useful in things like breast cancer and lymphedema. And it's a more of a cooling lymphatic. So it's a real nice one. You can just eat the flowers, and right away, if you have a sore throat, it'll just coat your throat. The leaves are real succulent and really tasty in a spring salad. So this spring, when we get to start having free salads, we'll probably be tasting some. Some of the ones that work deeper in the system that I use if someone's got a more serious imbalance going on, red root, figwort. I use figwort a lot in my cleansing formulas. It's a deeper tissue alternative, and it goes in deeper. Nervines, there's all kinds of nervines. Many. And they're all a little bit different. Chamomile is a great one for little people. Even little babies can have chamomile, like for colic and things like that. Mom can drink it. You can put a couple of squirts into a dropper and just have them have that, and it's really calming. Fussy. Matthew Wood says chamomile is for babies of any age. So, and I think that's pretty true to it. St. John's wort is a nervine, and it's really specific to the physical nerves. It's for places that are perfused with nerve tissue. It's super pain relieving. And one of the reasons that is true is because it helps the blood there. But it's got definite pain relieving qualities, and it's very useful. It's for nervous conditions that poke at you. And so it's very specific for puncture wounds And it's hugely important for, like, if you step on a nail or something like that, because it cleans it out deep, and it also helps it to heal. It's antiseptic, it's analgesic. It's a really good one. It's got some cautions around it because it's really good at what it does with the liver and things. It will help clean house. Maybe sometimes before we want the house to be really cleaned, like if there's a certain medication on board that we want to stay in the system for longer. And it also works in a part of the nervous system where a lot of the mental health herbs or pharmaceuticals are working, and so it can affect the strength of those, either enhance it or deplete it, and you have to be careful around using that one internally sometimes. It also has a photosensitivity component, so you don't want to, if you're out in the sun a lot in the summer or even in the winter, it can heighten your sensitivity to the sun and raise your chance of sunburn. So you gotta be careful with that one. I love skullcap. Skullcap is just a lovely herb. It's great for calming the body and muscles and restless, and it's also great for busy brain. So this one I use a lot with people. I use it myself for helping with quieting the mind and just settling down that whole nervous system. Easy to grow. Another mint family plant. You can grow it in a pot. It likes to grow in slightly bit more wet than some of the other mints. They'll just grow anywhere. This one's a little bit more fussy. Passion flower is another one that's really popular and you probably have heard about. It makes a nice tea. It's really lovely and calming. Hops. Hops is calming. It's more of a body calmer than it is a brain calmer, I feel like. And it's also a digestive herb. It's a really good digestive bitter. It's actually a good herb for stimulating lactation, so to move some fluids. So and it helps the mom relax if they're having trouble with that piece of learning how to be a new mom. That can help all of those areas. So it's a good one to try. Milky oats is a really nice nervine, and it's actually also more of a tonic-y herb. It's very what we call tropho restorative. It's really nutritious. It's very nourishing, and it's a great one for our adrenals. And it's not a sleepy herb. You just drink it because it just helps nourish the system that needs to be calmed down. It's a really, really nice one. Purgatives, they help get things out of our body that we don't want in there. These are strong herbs that are used very specifically to encourage elimination and things like that from poisoning and toxins and things. Not something you're going to just add to your daily drinker. And vulneraries, that's the name we use for like wound healers. And there's many, many. Marshmallow root, plantain, yarrow, comfrey topically, self-heal, this is prunella, that's a lovely wound healer. Chickweed, honey. Honey is a great wound healer. So, speaking of honey, as we're kind of running down the clock here, I brought the usnea because you can look for that right now, and it's perfect for this time of year with the winter crud that's going around, and you have an opportunity to be able to maybe find some of your own medicine. We talked about the birch bark, which is also something that you can find, now if you look for it and you're out in the woods, that you can make something that can help your body feel better. This is honey, onion, cough syrup. And it's really good. And you can, pour it in your cup maybe, because it's a little bit, it's thin. The juices from the onion go in the honey, and it thins it out. I made this for our class that we got canceled. So that's been in the fridge for a month, and it stays for a long time. You can actually eat the onion and not strain it out too. But can you feel? So I'm talking to my friend, herbalist friend. She's really sick down in the cities. And she was coughing, and she had tried like everything she could think of in her cupboard, and she's like, what am I missing? You know, so I'm talking to her on the phone, and she's trying to figure it out. I'm like, okay, what do you have? You know, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have that? I said, I don't know. Is it time to make some onion cough syrup? And she's like, oh my God, I have some in the back of her fridge that she had forgotten about. And she went and got it while we were on the phone. She took a couple spoonfuls, and by the time 10 minutes went by, she had stopped coughing. And she had been coughing for like an hour. And it's just right away. It's very soothing. It's really good. Now this is just very basic. This is onion and honey. You can, you know, do lots of other things. You could put thyme in there. You could put garlic in there. You could put orange in there. You know, there's a lot of different variations. But this is the simple, like, go-to. I need this now. It's super easy to make. You can make it in a hurry, in a little saucepan. You just chop up the onion, and you cover it with the honey. You don't have to pour a whole bunch, just so it's covered. You super low heat until the onion gets translucent, and you know it's like gone out into the honey, and it gets real thin. You strain it up, and there you go. You can take that on a spoon every couple of hours as you need to. You know, honey has, because you're using that super low heat, you're not wrecking the properties of the honey. You have to be careful with little kids, you know, 2 and up for this, but it's just really effective. The other way that you can do it if you don't want to put it to the heat and you don't need it this red hot minute is to do the same thing but in a covered dish or a jar on the counter and just let it sit like overnight, and by the next day the same process will have happened with the onion, and you can dump it out and strain it or whatever. And then if you do strain those onions out though, save them and use them for cooking because they're really tasty with certain things. So mix them into your vegetables or something. So
would something like that like stay fresh in the fridge?
it does. I mean, a couple of months at least, probably longer. You have to say things like a couple of months if you're gonna check it. So. Okay, this one. So was it not last month, but the month before we talked about rose hips, and we did some tasting with rose hips, and we talked about the vitamin C content and some of the properties that they have. And I went home and I made this rose hip oxymel. So an oxymel is a combination of vinegar and honey, and the ratio is kind of about sort of your taste, but so you want to get it balanced enough where you know it tastes good, but it's not just all just honey. Now, unfortunately, I told the people that were at class that time, I don't know if you remember, Robin, but I was making a ginger honey at the time, and I was going to do the rose hip in the vinegar and then put it together, and it's going to be amazing. So when I went to strain out the honey, I don't know what happened, but the ginger it went bad. So I didn't have time to make another ginger honey before this class. So this one's just the rose hip with the honey in it. So rose hip in raw apple cider vinegar. You get to choose. I'm not gonna part.
What was the name of the vinegar honey combination again?
An oxymel, OXYEMEL, something like that. And you can make just about any herb into an oxymel. So you're not wanting an alcohol tincture, and you're not going to get around to, messing around with glycerites and things like that, honey is a great menstruum to use, as well as vinegar. A lot of people will just take the vinegar and just drink it straight, but for those of us that don't want that vinegar in our lives in such a pronounced way.
What is this for?
Rosehip is high in vitamin C, so that's why I made it for us, so that we have a vitamin C source in the winter. And I can do the straight vinegar, but my husband, he's like not having it. So, we mix it with honey. And then every day, a spoonful, or like tonight, we had some leftover cold beets, and I drizzled it on the cold beets like the vinaigrette. Really good.
What were your ratios in this one?
Probably about 2/3 vinegar, 1/3 honey.
And what kind of vinegar do you use? Apple cider?
Raw apple cider vinegar. Always the vinegar with the mother.
And then just cover the rose hips, or like how many?
You make it just like you would a tincture.
Tincture?
Yep, yep, definitely. No air. Right? So,
What does that mean when you say with the mother?
if you take a look at pasteurized vinegar, it's like clear. There's no sediment or anything in it. That's been treated and heated and processed. Raw vinegar is cloudy and has stuff in it, and that's the mother, and that's the magic. So you shake that in before you use it. It's probiotic, it's anti-inflammatory. The vinegar is just like a magic cure all
But
by
the
itself.
other kind isn't.
Right.
Doesn't have all that.
Does
other
not.
Stuff
Doesn't. But it's good for cleaning.
in there.
Anyway, okay, one more. We talked a little bit about spilanthes earlier. Do you remember what category that was in?
Say it again.
Spilanthes. Spilanthes is an antiseptic. It's astringent. It's antimicrobial. It is analgesic. It's got a lot of layers. So it's a great wound healer. It's got a lot of properties. One of them, which you're going to get a chance to experience right now. So you can put this on your spoon, or again, if you're tired of mixing up your flavors, you can just go like that, and you can see what happens when you get familiar with spilanthes.
So is that on here?
It is under,
First page and
yeah. Just sit with it for a sec. I bet you can already tell what I use that for. Something happening.
Numbing?
Tingling.
Lingering.
Did you taste it? This one grows as an annual in our area. It's actually from Africa, but you can grow it here.
Did you speak up?
Oh, this one is an annual in our area, but you can usually find plants and grow it, and then harvest it. And what's it doing?
Like a mouthwash.
Like a steamer or something.
Is it numb?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you see how this would be useful for something like a sore throat or a toothache? This plant's nickname is the toothache plant. So I use this in my throat spray that I put with echinacea and some other herbs for people with sore throats. It's great for scrapes and things like that because it numbs the area. So it's like, you know, you got little kids running around scraping their knees and stuff.
How about like mosquito bites or something? Some little kids get pretty upset by something like that.
Yeah, plantain's a good one for that. Plantain draws that mosquito bite right out of there. Yeah. Any questions about any of the herbs we talked about today, or your experiences, or?
The question about nettles, so I've heard for years how good they are. I've always been afraid to the taste, but then as I've been reading more, I feel like my constitution is dry and hot. And I've read that nettles are drying.
They're drying.
So is that something that, you know, it's super good for you? Should I stay away from it?
Well, you could try one of the other adaptogens that is not so dry, and if you're looking to it for the adaptogenic properties, but if you're thinking more about the allergy piece, then we can do things like you take that nettle and you blend it with something that's gonna balance out that drying property.
Okay.
So, you know,
That makes sense.
and as the allergy thing, you can take it as tincture, so it's not like drinking the tea that's really gonna wash through and dry out like your digestive system or your urinary tract as much.
Okay.
So, and then it's easy to blend something that's gonna balance that out.
Balance it out. Okay.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Good question. Anything else?
So this was a lot of information,
It is.
and, do you recommend any books or anything?
On my website, I have a whole book list. The energy-based therapy books are mixed in there too, but you can pretty much tell the difference from the title, you know.
Okay.
So,
What's your website?
energyforlifeconnection.com. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.